What's up, guys? Alton from MicroGrinder Poker School back with a new video for you guys today on my YouTube channel. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about what turn and river raises really mean at the micro stakes. So I did an analysis on my database for my book, and I analyzed what turn and river raises really mean at the micro stakes. So if you don't know what they mean statistically in terms of looking at player pools, stay tuned because you're going to want to watch today's video to find out. Hey guys, welcome to today's video. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name's Alton Harden. I'm the founder of MicroGrinder Poker School and this YouTube channel, as well as the author of the best-selling poker book, Essential Poker Math. This channel is all about turning beginning and struggling poker players into solid winning poker players through sound poker fundamentals. So if you guys are new to our channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button down there in the corner. And without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into today's video where we're going to talk about what turn and river raises really mean at the micro stakes. So today's video is all about analyzing and providing you guys information on what turn and river raises really mean. So what I did in preparation for a certain chapter in my book is that I went into my Poker Tracker 4 database, analyzed roughly 250,000 hands, and I looked at situations where I c-bet the turn and I faced a raise, or I c-bet the river and I faced a raise. And I wanted to look at these situations to determine, number one, how often they're pure bluff, number two, how often they're semi-bluff, and number three, how often they're for value. And also, when they are for value, what type of hands are they typically? Are they two pair? Are they set? Are they straight? Are they a flush? Or are they even better than that? So I wanted to look at this because if we go back several years to poker and Beluga Whale or Andrew Seidman, there's a theorem or concept named after him called the Beluga theorem. And with the Beluga theorem, essentially what it says is that if you have a single pair hand, such as top pair, when you're facing a raise on the turn, you should strongly reevaluate the strength of your hand because turn raises are typically for value. So I wanted to prove that theorem in regards to the hands I played at the micro stakes over the past several years. So I looked at these 250,000 hands, and I know over 2.5 years, 250,000 hands isn't a lot, but I'm not a high volume player like a lot of people where somebody may have 1 million or 1.5 million hands at this point in time over maybe 2 years. But still, I think for the purpose of my book and the purpose of this analysis, 250,000 hands is more than enough. So what I did is I went in there and I did the filters in Poker Tracker 4, and I individually looked at all the different hands. And I looked at the different type of hands that people were raising me with, and I tallied them up into a spreadsheet, pulled up the percentages, and put that information together into my book. And here's the results. So let me go ahead and pull up the results, and here they are. So turn raises, 70% of the time they're for value, 20% of the time they're a pure bluff, and 10% of the time they're semi-bluff. And this was really interesting to me because I thought that there would be a lot more semi-bluffs than there are, and there would be less bluffs. So I thought that semi-bluffs would be over here and bluffs would be the lowest. But in fact, bluffs were occurring at a higher rate than semi-bluffs. But there's still kind of, if we go back to the Beluga theorem, a majority of these turn raises are for value. So turn raises can be, and they are polarized, but a majority of the time they are for value. 70% of the time they're for value, and the remaining 30% of the time it's either a bluff or it's a semi-bluff. Now, if we then look at the river, it's going to be generally depolarized where a majority of players are raising for value, with a very small percentage raising as a bluff with a missed hand. Maybe they have a blocker to the nuts, or there's a scare card, or it's a paired board and they want to represent a really strong hand. But greater than 90% of the time, it's for value. And if we think about this at the micro stakes, people play pretty straightforward by the time we get to the river if they're going to be putting in a raise, especially when somebody is c-betting the river. So majority of the time, they're just looking to get value and extract value, and they play in a straightforward fashion. And so it kind of makes sense that with the river being an end of action spot where there's nothing else, no other cards are going to come out. This is potentially going to be the last bet that they're going to put in, that they're going to be raising as a value raise and not as a bluff. And so getting back to the blue gum theorem, yes, it holds true for the turn, but it's even more important on the river. So when you're facing a raise, when you see bet on the turn or the river, you should assume by default that if you don't know anything else about your opponent, assume that it is for value and you can fold your hand. Now, against aggressive opponents and decent regulars, and also so just some maniacs, sometimes it's going to be a bluff and sometimes it's going to be a semi-bluff, but an overwhelming majority of the time it's going to be for value, especially on the river. So if you have a hand like a single paired hand, such as top pair, top kicker, top pair, good kicker, or an overpair, you should really think about laying that hand down when you're c-betting and facing a raise, whether it's a check raise from an out of position player or it's a raise when they're in position. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the hands. I analyzed on the turn. I didn't analyze on the river the type of hands that people were raising with, but I did analyze it on the turn because that's initially what I was looking at, and then I expanded it to look at river raises. So when we're looking at the turn, in terms of the hands that they're raising with, a majority of the time it's when somebody either has a set or three pairs. So 33% of the time it's either a set or three pairs. 25% of the time it's two pairs, and that's either slow played, two pair on the flop. But typically when I looked at this, it was when somebody flopped one pair, they called your flop c-bet maybe with middle pair or top pair with the weak kicker, and they turned two pair, and then they're raising you on the turn when they make two pair. 18% of the time, it's when somebody had the straight. Sometimes they slow played it on the flop. Sometimes they made it on the turn, but regardless, they're raising on the turn to get value. And then 16% of the time, it's when somebody had top pair or an overpair where they were slow playing it on a flop and they decided to put in a raise on the turn. And then only 7% of the time, people were raising a flush on the turn. And this makes sense because if you have a flush, your hand really isn't that vulnerable, and unless you have a really low flush. So it makes sense to try to raise on the river for value rather than on the turn. But it holds true. So if we have a hand like top pair, top kicker, or an overpair, all these raises, only 16% of the time is it a top pair or an overpair. The remaining percentages of the time, it's two pair or better, with the majority of it being sets or three of a kind. Now, looking at bluffs, here's an interesting thing that I found looking at bluffs on the turn, is that a majority of the bluffs, and I wish I didn't actually record the statistics in regards to the percentages of bluffs on different board textures, but when I looked at the hands, a majority of the bluffs occurred on a paired board. And this makes sense. So let's take, for example, maybe a 5-9-9 flop, or maybe a 7-3-3 flop, a flop where it's a paired board where it's you c-bet the flop with potentially an overpair, or you're c-betting with an ace high, and you fire a second barrel on the turn, and your opponent raises you. So when they're raising you there, it doesn't really make that much sense unless they have trips. But why would they raise with trips? If they flopped a boat, let's say if it's a 7-7-5 and they have pocket fives, it doesn't make that much sense for them to raise you on the turn when they already have a boat, unless they're looking to extract value from out of position. But if they're in position, it would make sense just to call and to raise on the river. Same thing with trips, unless you have very vulnerable trips. Maybe you have a low kicker. But in general, I mean, it's very hard for both opponents to have trips. So we typically wouldn't expect a raise with trips either. But a lot of people know that on a paired dried board texture, such as deuce 7-7, where it's rainbow, that when you're c-betting the flop, especially if you're c-betting a high frequency, that you're going to have crap a percentage of the time, or you're not going to have an uber strong hand. Maybe you have an overpair, maybe you have two Broadway cards over, maybe you have a pair such as pocket sixes or pocket fives as well. But when you face a raise on the turn, you're going to assume, because of the Beluga theorem, that it is going to be a value raise. And so what I found is typically it is on a paired board where they're trying to represent trips, but a majority of the time they're full of crap. So it was very interesting to see that and to learn that information, that a majority of the bluff turns are on paired boards, and it makes complete sense. So that's what I found, and I think it's very interesting that the Beluga theorem, hands I played from 215 all the way down through 2017 to this date, until I stopped playing on Ignition, is that the Beluga theorem still holds true at the microstakes. This was at 25 and L, 10 and L, and 5 and L. I looked at all the different stakes, and it was a commonality at all these stakes that turn raises and river raises are predominantly for value. So that's what turn raises and river raises mean. If you guys didn't know about this, if you guys are surprised, if you guys found something else in terms of your own analysis where you play, put your comments down below. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, or just give me your general thoughts in terms of your experiences, in terms of just remembering past hands that you played. Put the comments down below. What did you face in terms of a turn raise, typically in a river raise, when you ended up calling one, potentially with a vulnerable hand like maybe pocket aces, overpair? Did you run into a set? Did you run into two pair? Was it a bluff? Tell me what you think. So that's what turn and river raises mean at the microstakes, at least with the player pool that I play with on Ignition and Bovada from 2015 to 2017. If you guys liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and also click that subscribe button down there in the corner if you're not subscribed. Tell your friends, tell your family members, tell everybody that you know that plays poker about my YouTube channel and my videos. If you guys like all these videos I produce, if you guys watch a lot of my videos, you like this free content that I produce on YouTube, please consider checking out in the description down below my Patreon account, because you guys can help support this channel for as little as $1 per month through Patreon. And for $10 per month, you not only get a free copy of my book, you also get access to all my courses at MicroGrinder Poker School as well, in addition to supporting this channel. So thanks guys for watching today's video. Hope you have an awesome day, and best of luck at the tables. I'll see you guys at my next video. Take care.